OCO and Taishu. Welcome to the Indigenous Peoples Reality Media. I'm Jay Winter Nightwolf, the originator and host. I have a very special guest who is a friend of mine with us tonight. Her name is Dr. Carmen Johnson. And Dr. Carmen Johnson is a Black American Indian woman who has been mistreated. And that's to be light about the situation by the United States government and the state of Maryland's judicial system. She was charged with crimes that she did not commit or had no part in it. So I thought it would be more than fitting to bring her on and to get her side of the story so you out there can know the truth straight from the horse's mouth. Carmen, how are you?
I am doing just fine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Now that I see you on my screen, I'm doing very well. Um, why is your story? But before we do that, you have a very important story to tell about the mistreatment and misjudgment of you, a Black American Indian woman, by the judicial system. Why is your story so important to be told?
My story is important to be told because I was politically hit, and I am the former housing chair for the state conference NAACP of Maryland. And I was trying to get a moratorium to freeze the illegal foreclosures that was going on back then. And I was told to go back on the news to say that Maryland did not have any foreclosure issues. And I refused to do that. Um, and with that said, a few years later, they put me in a real mortgage bank and wire fraud case that consisted of 14 people, and I only knew of two, which were realtors. And how I knew them is the fact that I had a for profit business, which we offered the services back then: credit restoration, debt arbitration, financial planning, preparation for bankruptcy, rehabilitation after bankruptcy. We offered small loans and things of that nature. And so my for profit business did relationships with mainly realtors, the major banks, and mortgage companies. So it wasn't no issue with me doing business at that time with these two Africans. And when I became the housing chair for the state conference NAACP, that's when my life completely changed, because I refused to go back on the news to say that we had foreclosures happening in the state of Maryland when they were happening all over the United States. But this particular powerful man wanted me to go back on the news to say Maryland, out of all the other states, did not have foreclosure issues. And the foreclosure issues were mainly in Black and Brown communities. And
Mm.
with that said, I was able to save over 800 and something families of color from illegal foreclosures. However, it cost me my life. And I went to trial. I refused to take a plea. The 14 other people did take a plea, but I refused to take a plea. I went to trial, and ultimately I lost at trial. And they was trying to give me 10 and a half years, but I ultimately did 3.5 years. And I've been all the way to the Supreme Court, and now I'm back in the appeals court. My attorney has just filed an error quorum nobis, which it was filed August 24th, 2020. And I'm still fighting for vindication from these charges and these crimes that they put me under.
Hmm. So how's it looking now?
I don't have faith in our judicial system because of what happened to me and how I was done. Not to mention, I've been all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruling was the fact that a jury of my peers found me guilty. So because of that, they're going to go with that, which it broke my heart because I knew that I was railroaded. But here I am, back in the appeals court again. I have started a petition to the President of the United States, the Chief and Commanding Officer, asking that my case be investigated to its fullest, and that, and then in turn, that I'm given a pardon. The President of the United States cannot vindicate me or exonerate me. Only the courts can do that. But the President can pardon me under the probation that they have me on, the restitution that they have me paying, and also the fact that they took a large amount of money from me and they called it substitute assets. So I'm still fighting for vindication, but I'm not confident in the court system.
Hmm. So how was your incarceration?
How was it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's funny because at trial, when it took the jury less than 2 hours to deliberate on 24 counts of mortgage, bank, and wire fraud on me. And right at that deliberation, the prosecutor stated that I was a terrorist and that I was ISIS. And they immediately arrested me. So I never went back home. So that's the first thing. Not to mention, they sent me to a camp. And a camp is where there's no fence, there's no wall, there's no guns, there's no any of that. But they used the term terrorist and ISIS to have me arrested immediately. And they said that they had to protect the streets of Maryland and the whole state of Maryland from me, and that I was dangerous. And it broke my heart. So it started then, right there, when the jury came back and found me guilty. And then it just went downhill after that. But they did send me to a prison camp. They sent me to Alderson Federal Prison Camp in West Virginia, which is one of the most racist places based on my knowledge is. They are very racist there. And I had three strikes against me being there. Number one, I'm a woman of color. Number two, I'm an activist. And number three, I maintain my innocence. So I didn't know that in the prison system, they don't like activists. I didn't know that they do not like people who maintain their innocence. And so I had it very difficult there. Not to mention, when I first got there, I didn't even know what my name was. Like, I had amnesia. I couldn't remember how I got there. When they first arrested me at the trial, they sent me to DC jail, and I was court ordered to solitary confinement for 4.5 months. However, after about 8 or 9 days of me being there, the psychiatrist, he told me that he would be fired and that he was releasing me into general population. And then he showed me the court order where I was court ordered to sit in solitary confinement for 4.5 months. So I got through that aspect, but I spent almost 5 months at DC jail, and that was difficult. And then they started me on my journey, which was, they thought that they were going to do dieseling therapy on me. And therapy is when they send you from federal facility to federal facility, which blows your mind in itself. And what it does is you can't get comfortable anywhere because they keep moving you. They keep constantly moving you. So by the time I got to like the fourth place, I was able, somehow was able to call my sister, and then my sister was able to contact my attorneys. At that particular time, I had a couple of attorneys, and they were able to contact the marshals to tell them to get me to my destination, that they were aware of what they were doing to me, and to get me to my destination immediately. You know, the other thing that blows my mind, I remember when they took me to the strip, the plane strip, and they is where they line up all the people that are shackled from their ribs down to their ankles. And it was rows and rows and rows of Black men of color. And it was marshals, and they had shotguns and dogs. And it blew my mind to see that. It just reminded me of slavery and
Intimidation.
intimidation.
Yes.
Or some type of mind twisting. Only thing I can say to that is I now know what it feels like, what some of my ancestors went through to be shackled from my ribs down to my ankles. I know what that feels like. I know what that looks like. I know what that smells like. I know what that tastes like. And I know what that hears like. I know what it sounds like the rattling of the chains, and not being able to walk because you're chained. So my point is, by the time I got to, they call it Camp Cupcake, which is Alderson Federal Prison Camp, I had amnesia. I was messed up. I'm told that I was wandering the compound, walking up to women saying, "Have you seen the sun? Have you seen the sun?" Like, traumatized. Like, I didn't deserve that. They bust me in the head to its fullest, as far as the judicial system is concerned. Not to mention, the Department of Justice have a 98% conviction rate, and only 2%, don't take a plea. They go to trial. But figure 0.5% will win. And then the other 1.5% is going to lose. And it's just really emotional. And the 98% are pleas. And they offered me like 3. And I think the first plea that they offered was like for 30 years. And I'm like, I'm not taking no plea because I didn't do anything. And then I didn't even entertain the second plea. And then the third plea was like 10.5 years. So even at sentencing, they was trying to get the 10.5 years. But I ended up doing 3 and a half years, but I was fighting the whole time I was there. Um, I had to fight with the guards. I was, drug on the floor. I was strangled. I was burnt on my forehead. I was thrown in solitary confinement. They called it suicide watch. I was chased around the compound like a dog while they were in their golf carts chasing me around. I mean, I went through it, and
Okay.
it was a horrible experience. And I never in my wildest dreams saw anything like this coming.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about you. Um, you have a PhD. Where did you get your PhD and where did you get it in?
I have my PhD in philosophy, and it was given to me by all the humanitarian work that I've done over the past 20 something years. And I accept it with honor, and I wear it, and I will continue to wear it
Where did you get it?
from Opus Dei,
Oh,
this church.
the
Yeah.
Roman Catholic Church, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let's get into what you've been doing since you've been out, uh, a free woman. Let's talk about the 1970 Crime Control Act bill. In 1986, there was a crack powder part of it. In 1991 was the Violent Crime Control Act. And in 1994, a Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act. You want to tell me about those?
Um, well, we can real quickly, the 1970s Crime Control Act, that was created technically for the mafia. And then the 1986 Anti-Drug Abuse Act came along, and that brought on the crack cocaine and powder cocaine disparity.
Mm-hmm.
Years later, it proved that it affected Black and Brown communities more so than any other community. And then the 1991, the Violent Crime Control Act also was titled as the Safer Streets and Neighborhoods Act. Then the most disappointing one was the 1994 Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act. And this was an act that was created by Congress dealing with the crime and law enforcement. And it is the largest crime bill that was ever created. And it was 365 pages, is what I hear. I haven't read the whole thing, but it was 365 pages. And at that time, it was to bring in more police officers and to fund them at $9.7 million, and to also have programs set up for reentry or prevention and things of that nature. But the strange thing about that was police officers supposed to have been doing the training in that, which I found that quite odd.
Mm-hmm.
However, what this crime bill did, it created a mass incarceration of our people, our Black and brown and tan people. And it also, it created involuntary servitude
Hmm.
to our people. And whether you are innocent or guilty, it at this point it was about money, because a large portion also went into the prison system, creating more prisons, and which also affected Black and brown and tan communities.
When you were in Camp Cupcake,
Yeah.
did you make any friends?
Um, I didn't quite fit in because for one, when I first got there, they thought that I was crazy. And,
Hmm.
that was the first thing. So that created a wedge. Um, Number two, when I did get my marbles back, when I did start recovering while I was there, um, I started filing lawsuits on the prison there because
Hmm.
fraud and the abuse that I was going through and the abuse that other women were going through. Not to mention the lack of medical care, and there was absolutely no mental health care there. And
Hmm.
these were women. We are women. We were away from our families. We were away from our children. We were away from our loved ones. And there was no type of programs. I know for me, you know,
Hmm.
they had me in programs like for drug addicts and stuff, and that had nothing to do with me. So it was difficult for me to, really have anything in common with most of the women. However, as I started healing, I, started communicating more with, like it was like one or two judges that was there. It was a senator that was there. It was, I, when they started realizing, hey, she's not crazy, I started kind of interacting with them and they were the Caucasians. And because I was in racist West Virginia, those were the women that I had to go get to assist when guards were, trying,
Being abusive, yeah.
yeah, or trying to affect my record when it would be needed at release. So, in other words, like you had what they call shots or infractions in your file,
Hmm.
take away good time and could take away or prolong your time there. And so I would have to go get these women to speak on my behalf.
Were these women incarcerated?
Yes.
Judges and senators?
Uh, yes.
Hmm. Okay. So
Mhm.
what about your sisters of color? Did they ever come to your aid or what?
No. But I'm sure that they were afraid. They didn't want what they saw that was happening to me. I'm sure that they did not want that to happen to them. Um, I remember when I was being drugged on the floor by like 20 guards, white guards, men. And I was being strangled by my scarf. And I never found my scarf again, but I was being strangled by my scarf and I blacked out. And I hear what I heard was it was like the guards had ordered everybody to their cubes because we didn't have cells. We had like little cubes,
Hmm.
little half a rooms type thing. And the guards ordered everyone to their cubes because they didn't want nobody to see what they were doing to me.
Mm.
What I hear is that it was, poor Caucasian women or inmate women that said, we're not moving. We see what you're doing to her. We're not moving. We're taking note of what you're doing to her. And so when I found out about that, I wish that that it would have been, women that look like me, but I understand why it wasn't.
Mhm. So if you did a ratio or a count of women of color as opposed to white women, what would be the numbers? Was it like 60% black and colored women of color, 40% white? What?
The camp holds about 11 or 1200 women. So you figure the women of color, of black, brown, and tan women was probably about 150. Um, Normally they send, you know, women of color, they send us to prisons. Um,
Hmm.
and then, so these camps are set up for Caucasian women. Um, and they are set up so these women can go through drug treatment like RDAP and other programs to
Hmm.
earlier than later. Um, but when I look back, now I realize that, the universe was with me
Hmm.
because they, at trial, they labeled me a terrorist and ISIS and all kinds of stuff like that. And they could have sent me to another place in West Virginia called Hazleton, which was behind bars and in a cell with three or four or five women in a cell with a toilet and guns and guards. And I really would have been mentally messed up. But they, sent me to this camp. But I mean, I still was terrorized because of who I was and because of who I am.
When you went to trial, the prosecutor called you a member or a part of ISIS?
When the trial was over with, after they came in at the 24th count of guilty, the prosecutor told the judge, and the judge is a man of color, and he went to
Oh,
more,
God.
and I think I was like his first or second trial. And the prosecutor told him that I was ISIS and that I was a terrorist and that I was dangerous and they had to get me off the streets immediately.
Well, it sounds to me like that prosecutor was wrong and he needs to be handled. Um,
It was a
and that
shoot.
and that judge for accepting that, it's something very wrong with that.
Exactly.
So you're out now.
Yeah.
What is the most important thing or things that people face when they first come home from prisons and jails?
For
Readjustment is one, right?
I think it goes even further than readjustments. When you think about the military and you think when the military come home from an assignment, they have to do what you call a debriefing or they
Hmm.
do a process to assimilate back into society or something to that effect. Well, that opportunity is not given to the returning, and I don't like to use the word returning citizen, but that's what the language is. But people that are coming from that penal system or that prison system, there needs to be a readjustment process. Like they want you to find the job like right away, as soon as you get out. Like they don't even give you time to get your mind right. They don't give you time to figure out what's going on. I mean, I was gone for 3.5 years, and I remember when my sisters picked me up, and my sister handed me my iPhone. And I had just purchased that iPhone in 2015, like a month before before I went to trial. And she put the iPhone in my hand, and I just stared at it because I didn't know what button to press, how to turn it on, what to do. And I was only gone 3.5 years. So can you imagine someone's that's gone 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. I mean, my heart go out to them. And then when you first get home, you go to the halfway house. If they have a halfway house, they expect you to find a job right then and there. I mean, thank goodness for, my family. I was able to, I haven't gone back to work, but it's because of my close knit family that I'm able to not have to worry about that part of it. But when I think about it, am I ready to function in society? When I think of the mental health stress that I've been through, and the physical abuse that I've been through, and the legal abuse that I've been through, and the injustice that I've been through. Like when I see a white man, I think that he's the feds. See a black man with a suit on, I think he's the NAACP. Like I'm like literally traumatized. If I'm so happen to be driving one day and a cop pull up behind me. I mean, I've been home 2 years, and I go into a sweat. I just start shaking. And I was only gone 3.5 years. So when I think about people that's been gone longer, my heart go out to them, and however that 3.5 years that I was gone, it seemed like 20 years to me because I'm emphatically innocent. So it seemed so long, and that's why I took it so hard. I think it's a whole different mind twist when you are innocent, and I just read a article on a man named Ronnie Long. I think that's his name. And I just read it like 2 or 3 o'clock this morning. 44 years.
For a crime he didn't commit.
Yeah. And I feel guilty because I'm sitting here complaining about the 3.5 years I did. However, I can imagine what's going on in his mind, because after 2 years, it's still happening in my mind. The mental part of it. I've never had a man hit me, or I've never experienced anything like that. And to have 20 white men on top of me and dragging me on the floor and strangling me, and like, what the heck is this? Like, what do I do with this? Like, what is this?
I know. Take a breath. Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Now that you are out, are you advocating for people that have been in prison falsely, or what?
I am advocating for all people that are behind the walls, that the jails, that are in the prisons, that are in the cages. I'm advocating for all of them. Now, I believe in mass liberation, and I do not believe in mass incarceration. Um, I do understand that, and I'm not a judge, but I do understand some people, may do need to be there, but it need to be some type of reform, some type of prison reform. Because when you think about the Prison Litigation Reform Act that was put in place by President Clinton, it ties the hands of inmates and prisoners when they are dealing with abuse like what I went through. And what I hear is my abuse was mild compared to what the men go through, what our beautiful men of color go through.
And nobody is talking about the mental health associated with being locked up in prisons and jails. Why is that? They can talk about everything else, but they won't talk about that.
I told myself all day long I wasn't going to cry. And I'm telling myself I'm not going to cry. But it's so strange because even with me being innocent, it doesn't matter. Like we all are grouped in there together. So the abuse, it it affects you to the point that you are crazy. Like
Mhm.
to mention slavery is embedded in my DNA on one side, and then on the other side of my DNA of my indigenous family that was here before anybody else got here, and the fact, of what we went through on that side. So both sides of my DNA is so to see the prison system and to start having these slavery thoughts, and it blows.
And thoughts of genocide.
Yeah, it it blows your mind. It takes you to a place that you really can never come back from.
Mm.
It's just no way. I don't care what if a returning person back into society tell me they fine, I can't believe it.
Mhm.
Unless they was just a Jeffrey Dahmer, or they was just a horrible person, like, and
Mhm.
but then, I've ran into people, I've seen women who cried because they didn't want to leave.
Really?
Really. So
So I guess that those women fit into that old um, story of three hots and a cot to sleep on every day. Maybe because that was probably one of the best things that ever happened to them, as bad as it is.
I've heard those stories.
Mhm.
Was the best that they've ever seen. But no one wants to talk about mental health, because you got to also remember, in the Black, brown, and tan community, that's a secret. Like, we don't supposed to talk about that. So not only do you have to come home and hide the fact, or try to hide the fact, that you just spent time in a prison, jail, or camp, but then you got to hide the fact that you messed up mentally.
Mhm.
So those are like two embarrassing things.
Right.
You a felon, and you mentally unstable. And these are the facts.
So I'm going to ask you another question. Do you think the federal government and local governments should spend more money on mental health? Well, not just people that are returning, but for average people in the streets, average people that walk around every day. Do you think there ought to be an ongoing mental health program for people?
Absolutely, especially if you Black, brown, or tan,
Hmm.
because the pain runs generationally in our DNA and our RNA. It runs deep. So that should be part of our reparation, is free mental health care. But it also have to be the right mental health care. Like when I came home, I went to one place, and it was mainly of Caucasians.
Hmm.
And it was a horrible experience. I mean, they was treating me like I was garbage.
Hmm.
And then I had to make a conscious decision, and I had to go to another location, which is mainly of people of color, and it's been working out pretty good.
Okay. Okay.
But I mean, it was even more traumatizing just sitting there with the place that I went. You know, everybody wanted to they insisted on telling me that I am a criminal, and I am not. They insisted, everybody wants to insist on telling me that I'm a felon, and I am not.
What do you think that this United Snakes of America can do to rectify a lot of the racial injustice and demonization of people of color? What do you think they should do? Not saying what they will do, but what do you think they should do?
I mean, I'm going to be as honest as possible. I think the first thing that needs to happen is we need to sit down amongst our people of Black, brown, and tan, and we need to have a dialogue because, even in this political race, we saw a divide of people of color.
Mm-hmm.
People of color are still going at it with one another because of this political race that just happened for the presidency. And
Right.
I think the first thing we need to do is have closed door conversations. Like when you was little and what happened at home, stayed
Mm-hmm.
at home. We need to have real conversations with one another. That's the first thing because it's
Uh,
people that. Mhm.
you're talking about like grandma and mama used to do to come to Jesus meetings?
Yeah, yeah. Because it's people that are Black, brown, and tan that are in positions to assist, and they're not. So they're not doing what they supposed to do for our community. So that's the issue right there. So how can we expect somebody else of another, you know, race? I don't like to use that word, but how
Another color. Mm-hmm.
how can we expect them to do something when we are fighting amongst each other?
That's very true. Well, Carmen, I tell you, this election showed all of us and people worldwide the true color of America. There's so much divide here. And when you stop and think about it, these are the descendants of those that came here over 500 years ago and tried to kill all of our people and then went to Africa and stole our black brothers and sisters and brought them here and had them do the work that they were too damn lazy to do. So it's you know, I believe a lot of different people's philosophies, and one is that of Malcolm X. Necessary. We need to do what we have to do to free our minds away from this colonialistic way of thinking that has been imposed on both uh, Native people, Indigenous people, and Black people. And until we do that, we got a big job within our own communities to do what we need to do to get our minds straight and get our minds away from thinking like the colonizers. Because not all of these white people, but a very large amount of these white people are the benefactors of what their ancestors did to get them where they are. And they always, up until now, are ahead of the curve economically and other ways. And until we do what we have to do to make things right with us, and we can never expect the other people to do anything to make anything right for us because they benefit from keeping us down. In one particular case, Khalif Browder, the backpack kid. In your words, why is his story so important to you?
I said all day I wasn't going to cry. Um,
That's okay.
I came home in 2018, and in 2019, his documentary was out, and I didn't know what it was, and I stumbled upon it. But before that, I was having serial suicidal thoughts. Like I literally could not function. Um, I thought suicide all day long. I could not handle the fact that I worked over 20 something years and, did so much in the community and, won so many awards and accolades and, had different politicians on speed dial and knew different judges. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everybody. And I could not handle this bag that they had put me in. So in 2019, I stumbled over his documentary, not knowing at the end how it was going to end. But I sat there and I started listening because I had never heard of him before. And what was so fascinating was the fact that he spent 3 years in Rikers Island in New York for a crime that he did not commit. And they were trying to force him to take a plea. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's my story, because they was trying to force me to take a plea. And I kept saying, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to say that I did something when I didn't do it. I couldn't fathom lying on myself because I was afraid of the white man. I couldn't imagine lying on myself to say I did something because I was scared. So to hear this little young guy's story and he to see him, the film, the footage of him being beat by guards and jumped by inmates, which I didn't have any violence from the women there, but I was physically abused by the guards and the staff there. But to see his stuff on video, it broke my heart. Not to mention for 3 years, they kept trying to get him to take this plea. Anyway, when he got out, so 16, 17, 18, he was like 19 when he got out. And he kept telling people, I'm mentally messed up. I'm mentally messed up. I can't handle it. I can't handle it. And those were the things that I was saying. And those were the things that I was thinking. I was telling people, I can't handle this. I can't handle it. I can't deal with it. And at the end of the documentary, without me knowing, he hung himself at his mother's house over his bedroom window. And I remember just bawling. And at that moment, I knew that I had to get myself together and that I did not want my family to have to drive up from South Carolina and I'm in my place dead. And this little young boy saved my life. And I can't even tell this little young boy, you saved my life. And, I'm much older. He's, I'm way older than that. And just the fact that I understood when he kept saying, I can't handle it. I understood what that meant. I understood what that looked like. I knew what that meant. To be
Is there
accused of something,
that you didn't do?
that's the worst.
Is there anything else? Well, before I ask you this question, You know, I want a part two and a part three of this conversation at some point, right?
Uh,
Will you come back for that?
I will.
Please tell people how they can read your story and how they could follow up on you.
Um, they can go to the website. It's called carmensstory.org. CARMENSSTORY.org. And they can read through it. There's letters on there from other women who went through abuse. There's letters on there where women saw me being physically abused. You can see the lawsuit that I filed on the prison for the abuse that me and the women were going through. Um, they can also sign my petition. We, just started the petition like a about 45 days ago. Some
Mm-hmm.
collect signatures to ask the president of the United States to investigate my case. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking the president of the United States to investigate my case and then grant me a pardon.
Any closing thoughts?
You just have to stay spiritual. You have to stay prayed up, because I can't don't do a crime because I didn't commit a crime. Khalif Broader didn't commit a crime. Ronnie Long didn't commit a crime. So I can't say don't go commit a crime, because they locking innocent people up.
Well, Carmen, I'm, my heart is with you, and I just want to thank you for coming on today and telling Carmen's story. And if you feel as though you have no one in your corner, you got me. I'll always be there for you.
I appreciate that.
And I love you dearly.
Love you too, Chief.
All right.
All right. Good night.
Good night. That's a story that has broken her heart, her family's hearts, her friends' hearts. And it broke mine when I found out about it. Next week, we are moving into this lie that they call Thanksgiving. Another one of the white man's great lies that he told. There was never a time in the Plymouth colony where Native American people and the European invader sat down to a Thanksgiving dinner. That's a lie. There's always been contention between the European and the American Indian and black people and other people of the world that are not white. But I like to tell you this. All white people are not bad. Just like all black people are not good and all native people are not good. I have to always reflect back to when I was a little boy. Down at the Lincoln Memorial when Dr. Martin Luther King came to Washington, D.C. to deliver his I Have a Dream speech. I was there. I was just a young boy. I had an opportunity to meet him that day just for a few minutes because they were bringing him out, and I ran up to him and I said, "Are you Dr. Martin Luther King?" He said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Are you a little Native American boy?" I said, "Yes, I am." And he gave me a hug. I will never forget that day. But one of the things that he always said was, "Do not judge me by the color of my skin, but by the content of my character. And that's how I look at people. Another great influence on me was my Cherokee grandpa, South Carolina. And he would always say, it's not about the color of your skin, or the color of your eyes, or the texture of your hair. And we would just look at him and say, well, what's it about, Grandpa? He said, it's about how you treat my heart. This young woman, this beautiful young Black Native woman that I just interviewed, she's the cousin of Jane Kennedy. And how they could take people of good conscience and good character and just throw them away is not the mentality of the human family. Just like they're doing to my deported brothers and sisters that served in the United States military honorably and were discharged with an honorable discharge. But because they weren't born here, they're deporting them. That's not right. There is so much wrong with this United States government that need to be corrected. Only if you speak out and protest what they've been doing for over 500 years. The U.S. Constitution never addressed women as being equal. They looked at Black people as being less than human, and they didn't care at all about the Native American. They came here, and when they saw our bountiful homelands and our pristine waters, and they stepped foot on it. And the ones that came here first were actually kicked out of Europe by the crown heads of Europe. You won't read that in the textbook, but you need to read. You need to study the true history of the formation of this United States of America. Joe Biden has been elected as the incoming president. Just as we hated so much of what Donald Trump has done to destroy this country and our friendships all around the world, just as we protested that, we need to make sure that we hold Joe Biden's feet to the fire, because we don't need another 4 years of nonsense. And I voted for him. So I guess what I'm saying to you is, folks, wake up out there. We are put on this earth by the Creator to help one another, not to harm each other. If you celebrate that Thanksgiving holiday, then that old lady that you see at the bus stop every morning catching a bus before the COVID virus, or you got a neighbor down the street, some elder down the street that you know don't have much, and if you could just fix them a plate and take it to them, because we are each other's brothers and sisters keeper, whether they like it or not, or we like it or not. That's just the way it is. Get used to it. So I'll leave you with these words from the Cherokee people. Until we talk again, Danada, Goai, Wado, and I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you for joining us tonight.